Nearly 5,000 years have passed since the reign of the first kings of Egypt's first dynasty, marked by what is called the unification of the two lands. Over the ages, knowledge and theories have accumulated in an attempt to explain this historical period and answer the question, how was the unification of the two lands achieved? One of the most famous sites associated with this important historical period is the Qom al-Ahmar site near Edfu in Aswan Governorate. In ancient Egyptian texts, this city was called Nekhen, which was the third nome of Upper Egypt, with its capital at El Kab. This city held great significance in the collective memory of Egyptian civilization, as it represented the cultural center of Upper Egypt during the pre-dynastic period. One of the most important artistic depictions referring to this city is the portrayal of the spirits of Nekhen and Buto as symbols of the ancestors of the ancient Egyptians themselves. Nekhen was known in Greek as Hierakonpolis, meaning city of the falcon, in reference to the god Horus, who was associated with the city. The history of this city dates back to around 4500 BCE, and it was of great importance during the pre-dynastic period, before the unification of the two lands around the 31st century BCE, and the rise of the city of Thinis, Abydos, to which King Narmer, the first king of the first dynasty, belonged. In fact, Abydos was depicted in the artifacts of Nekhen. In the late 19th century, James Quibble, an English archaeologist who studied under the legendary archaeologist Flinders Petrie, emerged on the archaeological scene. Beginning in 1893, he started excavations, moving between various sites such as Deir el-Balas and Kift, until he settled at Qom al-Ahmar, Nekhen, alongside another archaeologist, Frederick Green. There, they discovered the foundation deposit of the temple, which contained numerous artifacts, including the mace head of King Scorpion, depicting the Scorpion King, who was likely the last ruler of the pre-dynastic period. However, the most important find was the Narmer Palette, which for the first time in history depicted a king wearing both the crowns of Upper and Lower Egypt. This deposit has been dated to the early dynastic period of the Old Kingdom. It appears that the deposit contains artistic pieces from different periods within the same time frame, with the oldest likely belonging to the Naqada, the third phase. The Narmer Palette. This famous artifact, known as the Narmer Palette, is the first to depict an Egyptian king wearing both the crown of Upper Egypt and the crown of Lower Egypt. It is also one of the most important artifacts that mention this king by the name Narmer. Furthermore, it is the foundational and definitive artifact confirming the unification of the two lands under this king. As we mentioned, the Narmer Palette was discovered by Quibble and Green. However, there is some confusion in the documentation of this excavation. Despite Quibble being a student of Flinders Petrie, one of the most famous and organized Egyptologists, Quibble was somewhat negligent in documenting his work. The palette was recorded as part of the foundation deposit of the temple at Hierakonpolis, Qom al-Ahmar, but Green documented that the palette was found in the same area as the deposit, only a few meters away. The word palette is a translation of the term pallet for grinding, and the artifact received this name because similar objects were used to grind coal. Thus, it was also called a coal grinding pallet. Although the exact purpose of the Narmer Palette and its use are unknown, there have been some theories to explain it. For example, as mentioned, one interpretation was that it was used to grind coal, but the large and heavy size of the palette compared to similar artifacts casts doubt on this theory. Other interpretations suggest that the palette had a ritualistic and religious purpose, with all these items being offered to the temple in early times as a gesture of respect for the city of Nekhen and its religious significance. The Narmer Palette, a historical document. The Narmer Palette is the first artifact depicting an Egyptian king wearing both the crown of Upper Egypt and the crown of Lower Egypt, making it the first artifact to portray a king ruling over both North and South Egypt. In the same deposit found at the Temple of Nekhen, a mace head of King Scorpion was also discovered, depicting him with the white crown of Upper Egypt. Additionally, a mace head of King Narmer himself was found, showing him with the crown of Lower Egypt. However, the Narmer Palette was the artifact that depicted a king wearing both crowns. The depiction of Narmer on the mace head with the red crown, and then with both crowns on the palette, serves as evidence of a political shift at the time, making him the king of both Upper and Lower Egypt, after previously being king of only the South. This supported the theory of a southern military conquest over the North, led by Narmer. The palette features depictions on both sides. Egyptologists have classified the side where the king wears the crown of Upper Egypt as the front of the palette, and the other side as the back. The front of the palette is divided into 3 vertical registers. In the top register, we see the facade of the royal palace, called the Serech, with the word Narmer written inside it, which is the king's name. The tradition of writing the names of kings inside the Serech continued for a long time until the use of the cartouche became common. On both sides of the Serech, there is a depiction of a cow with inward curving horns, symbolizing the goddess Bat, the deity of the 7th nome of Upper Egypt, who was of great importance during the pre-dynastic period and the Old Kingdom. In the second register, the king is depicted wearing the white crown of Upper Egypt, holding a mace and about to strike the head of a captive, who we will discuss later. Narmer is dressed in the royal Shendit kilt, from which hangs the tail of an animal, a bull, symbolizing brute strength and virility. Behind the king is a figure carrying the king's sandals, while the king himself stands barefoot. In ancient Egypt, the title sandal bearer was an actual title, though it was more symbolic and indicated a close relationship to the king rather than being a practical job. In front of the king is a falcon, pulling the head of a captive by the nose with a hook. The captive's head appears between 5 papyrus plants. This scene has been interpreted as the king being represented by the falcon and the 5 papyrus plants symbolizing the number 5,000, suggesting that the king had captured or defeated 5,000 of his enemies. In the bottom register, 2 enemies are depicted. If you look closely, they appear to be fleeing or escaping from the battlefield. Alternatively, from a bird's-eye view, they could be seen as 2 fallen men lying dead on the ground. The back of the palette is filled with numerous details and features 4 vertical registers. It begins with the Serech, which contains the name of Narmer, along with the goddess Bat. In the second register, on the left, we see the king wearing the red crown of Lower Egypt, with the sandal bearer behind him. In front of the king is his name, Narmer, as well as a man wearing a long wig and leopard skin. The corresponding hieroglyphic symbol for him is thothi, which is an ancient Egyptian word roughly translated as minister, similar to a modern prime minister. In front of them are 4 individuals holding flags, representing animal hides, a dog, jackal, and 2 falcons. These flag bearers are referred to as the followers of Horus, who is the king himself. At the end of the scene, there are 10 headless enemies with their heads placed between their legs, alongside the depiction of a falcon, a spear, and a plow, symbolizing the enemies that Narmer has defeated and the symbols of their provinces. In the 3rd register, 2 men are depicted holding ropes that bind the necks of 2 mythical creatures, a mixture of a serpent and a feline. The intersection of their necks forms a circle, which may have been used to grind coal, leading to the interpretation that the palette was used for this purpose. The 4th and final register shows a bull breaking through the walls of a fortified city while trampling a man beneath its feet. What does the Narmer palette represent? Despite the simplicity of the scenes on the Narmer palette and the complexity of some parts, it has sparked widespread debate regarding its purpose and what the depictions represent. Some scholars argue that the palette represents a literal depiction of Narmer's military victory over the Northerners, while others believe it symbolizes the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, represented by Narmer, the southern king who subdued the north. The portrayal of the enemies on the palette has led some to hypothesize that they are Libyans. This assumption is based on other artifacts that depict Libyans, but in this context, the term refers to an ancient Egyptian word pronounced Takenu. The Takenu at that time may have been the inhabitants of northern Egypt, whose stronghold was the city of Buto, Tel el Farain, currently in Kafr el-Sheikh, who were later pushed westward to form the basis of the Takenu tribes. Thus, they were primarily Delta residents rather than Libyans in the modern sense. Returning to the captive that King Narmer was about to strike, there is a hieroglyphic sign near his head that consists of a spear and a water lily pronounced Wash or Washi. According to the Palermo stone, which is the oldest royal list we have from the 5th dynasty, this name is mentioned among the kings of the north. This could suggest that Narmer depicted himself triumphing over the last of the northern kings, assuming that the palette illustrates the decisive end of the battle between the northerners and southerners. Furthermore, this interpretation might provide insight into the portrayal of the Libyans on the palette, as the spear could represent one of the northeastern provinces near the Libyan border. Thus, this interpretation may cover some aspects of the mystery surrounding the Narmer palette, but it is neither the only explanation nor the definitive one in the long journey of seeking the dawn of Egyptian civilization. As we conclude our journey through the history of the Narmer palette, we find ourselves facing one of the most significant artifacts that tells the story of the unification of ancient Egypt. This artistic piece is not just a historical relic, it is a living document that embodies the struggles and challenges faced by King Narmer in his quest to unite the two lands. Through its complex scenes, we can glean much about ancient Egyptian civilization, including the military, religious, and political dimensions that shaped the reality of that era. While we present various interpretations of what the palette represents, mysteries still surround it, making it a focal point for ongoing research and study. We hope you enjoyed our exploration of this historical enigma and gained a deeper understanding of the importance of ancient Egyptian history. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to stay updated on all that's new in the world of ancient civilizations. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video as we uncover more historical secrets.